Hey everyone, welcome to the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast, where we help you build, run, and keep great teams. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome into the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast. I'm so excited about today's topic of conversation. We're talking about how do we build up the next generation of leaders, and no one better than to speak on the topic than our guest today, Brett Connolly. Sir, welcome to the podcast.
I thought you were hyping someone else up. I was like, who's coming through those doors? And I was like, oh, I'm the guest. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time today, and I'm just so grateful you've got some time in your schedule to spend with us and to invest into all of our leaders who are listening today. Brett, as we get started, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself to our listeners and maybe even share the story of how you ended up here at Vanderbloemen? Because I think it's very poignant for today's conversation as well.
Yeah, so let me just say, I'm sure it'll be unpacked in some of your other questions, but I wasn't even sure I was called to ministry. Yeah. I didn't know what that looked like. That really wasn't too much, like it wasn't really on my radar when I was going into college. And I grew up going to church. I was a believer. I was serving, and I was like, okay, what I want to do is work with like a team. Like I was like, it could be marketing, it could be business, sales. I'm going to work for the Rockets. I'm going to work for the Astros. That's right. God had other plans. I got plugged in with a parachurch ministry at, I was going to private school not private. I was going to Lone Star Community College.
Okay.
Cause I was balling on a budget. Okay. And, you get your basics taken care of, but that was the best thing for me. Cause I fell in line with this parachurch and I got to own my faith. I went my parents' faith, really, and then I started wrestling with things. And I was like, I might be called to ministry. Yep. And then I started reaching out to mentors, peers, and they're like, you might be called to ministry. And I remember my youth pastor, he did the classic, and I'm glad he did this, because if you can do anything else, do it, because it's difficult. And clear as day, I just changed my major then and there. Yep. I changed where I was looking to go to school. I literally Googled Texas Christian schools, and Dallas Baptist was one of the first ones that popped up. And I was like,
shout out.
Sure, DBU. And so the next week, they actually sent me something. I'm sure it's like something in their system. I clicked it, and they figured, I don't know. I'm not in marketing, right? But they sent me something. I was like, oh, scholarship opportunities. And I just dove in from there. That's great. Internships, really, and graduated, jumped into full-time ministry from there, served at a couple of good-sized, kingdom impactful ministries here in the Houston area. Yep. And did that for about a decade, close to. And it was about year 6, kind of year 5, year 6 with my most recent full-time ministry position. And my wife and I were just getting a sense that there might be something else. And we weren't sure what that was going to look like, you know, and we're not a big knee-jerk reaction couple. Like, that's not how I operate. I'm pretty loyal, and I've just seen too much of the impact of too quick of decisions, and good. Even on the other side with Vanderbloemen, interacting with young pastors, young directors, and even sometimes older ones that still have maturing to do. We all have maturing to do, right? But where it's just knee-jerk reaction to knee-jerk reaction. And you can see that on a resume of like, okay. 5 times in a row it wasn't you, it might be you, you know? That's right. And so we were just kind of prayerfully considering what our next step was. And it was so funny. I went to vanderbloemen.com looking at ministry opportunities. Yeah. And nothing really stirred our soul. Nothing really got us excited. Just for us, like nothing quite fit. And again, I didn't want to just throw my resume around. Yeah. And then I saw there was an internal role. It was a recruiting role. And I was like, that's kind of the best of both worlds. I was a communication major with Christian studies, an emphasis on that. And I was like, this seems like something I would enjoy doing.
Good blend.
And dusted off my resume, only place I put my resume out for. And I also, another thing I saw was the opportunity for upward mobility.
That's really good.
Because in some ways I kind of felt like I was typecast a little bit in the church context of, you're this, so if you want to go do something else, you might need to go it somewhere else. And I was like, but as a loyalist, you know, you're like, well, I love this church context,
That's right.
you know. But I looked at Vanderbloemen and I saw the opportunity to grow and to be developed.
Really good.
And so that's one of the major reasons why I put my resume out for Vanderbloemen, and it moved quickly. I still absolutely view this as my ministry. I'm working with pastors. I'm working with churches all the time. I was just on the phone with a church and one of their executive pastors, and just helping them walk along through the process. And I didn't look over the fence and said, I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. But I go, if I kick butt as a recruiter, maybe I'll get some more responsibilities.
That's really good.
And it could be debated whether I kicked butt as a recruiter, but I did eventually get more responsibilities, you know, and I tried to lead with yes.
That's
good. Vanderbloemen, we have a culture team, and I was like, yeah, sign me up. Opportunity to speak into more things, interact with people I might not usually interact with. Really good. And I just think that helped me get more comfortable in the company. Yeah. Eventually I became a senior recruiter quickly after that. And then eventually I became the manager director of recruitment. And then about 3 years ago, I transitioned fully into being an executive search consultant, which is frontline interaction with churches, schools, faith-based organizations. And I have absolutely loved it. But I also realize and understand that if I would have put my resume from church to applying just to a executive search consultant, I wouldn't have been able to make that leap. And I think that's where a lot of young candidates make kind of a pitfall of their own, is they shoot their shot and they're not being realistic.
That's right.
You know, so I'm probably going on a tangent. I think that's called a recovering pastor. You know, you can kind of get going. But that's a little bit of my background. I love what I get to do at Vanderbloemen. Come alongside churches, come alongside pastors. Sometimes you're still putting on that recruiter hat. Sometimes you're putting on that consultant. I mean, the consultant hat's always on. But sometimes you're interacting with a church or a pastor and you go, we need to take a step back and we need to pray. Or, hey, this pastor's in the weeds of things. You know, it's dark time. You know, tough transition out of their current role. Like,
really good.
Are you in a spot where you could jump into something and hit the ground running, or do you need a time of healing? You know,
that's good.
So those are things that get me up in the morning. Sometimes they keep me up at night. You know, but it's you feel the weight. There's a responsibility. You know, it's a real joy though.
Yeah, I think your experience is super valuable, especially on the topic of developing young leaders. Like you said, a lot of times the younger generation can maybe apply to that role that they think that'd be a great fit in, and they very well could be, just maybe not right now.
That's right.
What are some ways, as we're talking about leadership development and really organizations having space for young leaders to grow into? Is there anything that you've been able to pick up on in churches who do that really well and raising up the next generation of leaders? Is there any like characteristics or traits of the churches that do that really well?
I think, it's kind of cliche now. It's like the next generation's the now generation. But I think churches that think like that get it.
Yes.
You know, and people that are just like, oh, you're the next generation, you're already creating a divide.
It's good.
Even just in the verbiage, the terminology.
Yeah.
You know, and so I remember my second ministry position. I was this associate. I started off and it was like I was kind of second chairing, you know?
Yeah.
And the executive pastor, I don't know what he saw in me, but he saw something in me. But he said, hey, I want you to start sitting in on the executive staff meeting after all staff meeting.
Yeah.
And did I say a whole lot? No. No, like that was not my role. You know, maybe every now and then they'd say, hey, what do you think about this? Or like if they asked me something directly. But I think being able to just shadow, listen,
really good,
be poured into, I think organically, but also like intentionally.
Yep.
Just with the pastors around the table, I learned so much. And it was just because an executive pastor saw me and said, you don't really deserve to have a seat at the table yet, but I see something in you and we want you to join in.
That's really good.
You know, and I think instead of just saying, oh, you have this role now, and so now you have a seat at the table, but be looking at people maybe on staff, maybe your interns, maybe people in like the residency program, and going, how can we include them more? How can we bring them in? Maybe not as the you're making the final decisions on budgets and stuff, but it's like, how can they come alongside? And then they just organically grow so well. And it's not just the games on a Wednesday. It's not just like, hey, you're going to teach your last Wednesday before your internship's up, but it's like, you got to see how, kind of a gross term, how the sausage is made, right? Like, you know,
it's true.
Because you want to know, is this really what I'm called to do? And you don't really know until you see the behind the scenes too.
That's really good. We were kind of getting it there is exposure versus maybe experience. And I think it's really impactful when the maybe senior level of leadership or whatever level of leadership is able to reach down and pull younger ones up and expose them into those rooms of where maybe some higher level of decisions are being made. A maybe cliche term that some churches or organizations will use is that culture, or whatever it may be, that something is caught versus being taught. And I think that's that's a tension that a lot of churches and organizations need to manage really well, because while it is important to not only expose the next generation to how things are done, and by doing so, they are hopefully picking up on tendencies and themes, but also directly kind of teaching them, like, hey, this is how this should be done. Do you think that maybe churches lean one way or the other, or maybe they need to focus in more on one versus the other? Do you have any insights towards that? Or
I think it's both. I think it is really both. A couple of things come to mind. We're working with this organization, and they've kind of crafted this rubric of who would be a good fit for our culture.
Yes.
And I think it's so interesting because like 1/6 of it is competency to do the job.
Yeah.
And 5/6 of it is like, are you humble? Are you self-aware?
Really good. Yeah.
And I think that's where churches and organizations are moving towards. But I also think that is a product of what Gen Z and millennials need in many ways. Like, it's like, oh, you're preaching to the choir, you know? And I think the more that an individual can be self-aware, the more it's going to pay dividends, you know, for the individual. I had an intern who is now the student pastor of one of the churches I used to work at. And I just saw something. I mean, it's so funny. I'll get lunch with him every now and then. He goes, I still don't know why you asked me to be an intern. I was a moron, and I was dating this girl. You know, like, it wasn't the best dating relationship. And I don't. And I was like, honestly, I saw a little bit of like me in him.
Wow, that's good.
And it was cool to be in that seat. It kind of makes me feel old, but also I was like, man, I see something, and it's rarely the most polished resume.
That's good. Yeah.
You know, it's rarely the like, oh, I finished this in seminary, and but it's like, well, it's the caught and the taught piece. You know, how are you doing both? And I see a kind of a disconnect with some candidates on the seminary side, where it's like they go all in on seminary, but they haven't been active in a church. They haven't been serving.
That's important. Yeah.
Even if it's volunteering or interning, it's like degree only. And now they're like, now that I have the degree, now I want a full-time job. And it's like, that's usually not how it works. A church wants both, or, truth be told, some churches lean towards experience.
That's really good.
Just depending on the denomination and things of that nature. And so some candidates go, I have the degree, but I can't get my foot in the door.
That's right.
Like, well, you got to start serving, my guy, you know, or gal. And so that's an important piece. And walking alongside that student, though, there were plenty of times where I even thought, oh, man, he's got maturing to go. You know, like, I remember one time he was supposed to be like opening up all our student buildings and stuff. And like, I was like, okay, he's got it taken care of. I was doing like the prayer and welcome for the 8 o'clock service. Okay. So I was like I was like several acres away. Like all the student stuff was up at the hill.
Yep.
Main worship center was down here. And I finished up the prayer and welcome, and I see him walking. And I'm like, and he's holding a donut. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he goes, oh. And I'm like, did you open up the buildings? And he goes, I was just about to do that. You know, so it's like, you got to live in grace.
Yeah.
You know? I have a 3-year-old, and it's like, sometimes you need to give a pow, right? But you come alongside and say, hey, you know why I did that? And so now he's married. He's killing it in ministry, and he brings up that moment.
Yep.
A lot. He goes, remember that time? And he goes, guess what? I've had an intern kind of do something similar. And so it's just kind of funny to see the process of, but it's like, live in grace. Don't drop the hammer.
Yes.
Walk alongside of, and empower, you know?
Really good.
So
that's really good. What are some things that churches or organizations can do better at when it comes to hiring for the long term? You kind of talked about how you were able to notice some potential or notice something in that youth pastor who's currently a youth pastor, but when you asked him to become an intern, what are some areas that churches or organizations need to maybe think about improving upon when it comes to finding the next?
And I think there's a kind of a gap here. There's kind of this revolving door in student ministry. I think the national average is an 18-month tenure for a student pastor or youth minister. I also think if we would do that study again, it might even be shorter now.
Probably.
Which is
scary.
Pretty disheartening. Yeah. And so you have young leaders who may have gone through 4 student pastors in their time in student ministry. Yeah. You know? And so what ends up happening is we kind of buy into the lie of that's the norm, because I also interact with a lot of youth pastors that are there for 5 years, that are there for 8 years. There are reasons why they're short stints, you know? We shouldn't just go, that's just the way it is, because that creates that revolving door and lack of depth. And with a lack of depth, it's easier to not be committed and to go off to something else. And one thing we know about this generation is they're looking for community and they're looking for authenticity. Yep. And it takes time to build authenticity, and they're going to find community somewhere. If it's not going to be the church, they're going to find it somewhere. That's right. And so something that I think is that we see take place is a senior pastor goes, oh, crud, we lost our student pastor, and we haven't developed anyone underneath, and they make another quick wrong hire.
That's good. Yeah.
To go, well, I don't have time to do that, and the executive pastor doesn't have time to do that, and the volunteers are tired. So here's the 3 resumes we got. Here's the best of the 3. Are they a great fit? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. And then it's like the definition of insanity in some ways. Like, why didn't that work out? Oh, another 18-month thing. Yep. And then the student ministries hurt even more, or the college young adult ministries hurt even more. And so I think even if it means temporary pain to really focus on long-term success is really important. You got to set the foundation, and even if that means taking another 6 months to make sure you get the right hire that fits the DNA, philosophy of ministry, mission and vision. That's what you want. Yep. Someone who's thinking about mentorships, because once you solidify that, then I think you can come alongside and say, okay, breathe life into these upperclassmen. Yep. And if you don't have many upperclassmen that you're inheriting, those 9th and 10th graders, they're about to be upperclassmen. Yep. Those middle schoolers, they're about to be high schoolers. Connect with the children's ministry, because that's your pipeline to who's going to be in the student ministry next year and the year after. So I think we need to stop playing the game of like, oh, that's just the average. It's like, if you do it right, they'll be around longer, you know? And I don't think you can do the game of like, you have to sign this, or we expect you to, like, that doesn't work either, especially with like younger pastors. You kind of go, you kind of wall up a little bit and you go, whoa. But I think there's a way to just naturally kind of do that dance where people are empowered, they're excited. You say, hey, we want you to mentor up people and train people up, and give really them the opportunity to maybe say, hey, we get final say, but we want you to build up an intern or 2. Yeah. You know, your second summer, we'd love for that to be a student that's returning. from your student ministry. And so
that's really good. As we kind of come to a close today.
Already
we go short here.
Okay.
Which is a higher purpose.
Right. A higher purpose. We go.
I know.
Okay.
We keep it concise and direct to the point. So maybe just speak directly to our senior leaders today as they are looking at who's a part of their team. Is there any advice that you would give to them when it comes to helping maybe the lower level of leadership develop into maybe that higher level of where they are? Is there anything that you could give to them today for them to maybe self-evaluate that they can improve upon?
Yeah, I mean, don't undersell one-on-one discipleship. And I think some of the best leaders that invested in me at an early age were just like, what do you not know? What do you want to know? How can I best serve you?
Yeah.
And those are pretty simple things, but I also know you get summer interns and the summer's so stinking busy.
Yes.
It's really easy to overlook the interns and they just become a solution to your needs. You know, we need to move these things to the storage unit. We need to do that. You need to go to Party City and get blue and red items for camp. And like it's really easy to just go, you are serving me so I can do the big things.
Yeah.
But stop, pause, and go, how can I invest in them?
Yep.
So they can figure out their calling that they can be invested in.
That's really good.
And I know you're talking on a different level than just interns, but I think young people in full-time ministry, they want mentors.
Yes.
They want to be, you know, and one thing that I've done leading people, there was one person that like we just weren't connecting. They weren't quite flourishing in their role.
Yeah.
And I just said, hey, you have the job description for what you signed up for, but I would love for you to write up a job description to the role you think you want. And I was like, take a week, write it up. And I was like, maybe we can do 0% of it. Maybe we can do 100%, 50%. I don't know, but I would love to learn more about your heart. What's missing?
Yeah.
And they did. They took it seriously. They wrote up something, and I was able to see like, okay, maybe I had some blind spots personally, and I was able to give them some opportunities to do some additional things, and that helped them flourish. That helped the relationship flourish more too, because I was kind of going, you're in this box to function within this, and yes, that's what they signed up for.
Yeah.
But you have creatives that they're like, hey, I have this idea, I want to do this, and sometimes you got to let them run while making sure it fits under the parameters, mission, and vision of your organization.
That's really good. Well, here's what I know, leader, is that if you take the time to invest in the next generation of leaders, that your mission and your vision can go farther than ever, and that's called leaving a legacy. Thanks again for joining us on the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're looking for more leadership resources, you can find us at vanderbloemen.com and on socials at Vanderbloemen. We'll see you again next week where we continue discussing how to build, run, and keep great teams.